From the Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek studio, PBS Kansas presents Kansas Week.
Emporia State gets the go-ahead to move forward with a controversial cost-cutting measure that some fear could end careers and change the face of Kansas education. Plus, a city in Kansas halfway to ending prosecution on possession of marijuana or fentanyl test strips. Already, other governments are threatening consequences. But first, why investigating complaints about foster care is too big of a job for those doing it. Or is it? That's what we're talking about right now on Kansas Week. I'm Pilar Pedraza, and this is Kansas Week. A new state agency designed to make sure Kansas looks after the kids in its care properly said this week it doesn't have the people it needs to do the job it's been assigned, at least so far. That's where we begin today. The Division of the Child Advocate told lawmakers Tuesday it has just 5 people to complete 69 open investigations. So far, the office has completed just 7 investigations, including one where state officials met with a child the office determined was too little and tried to move the child to a new home just weeks after major brain surgery. The head of the office, Carrie Launard, said the pace her workers have maintained in the months since the office opened in December doesn't feel sustainable. Complaints they fielded since opening range from a child's initial removal from their family, concerns about case managers and legal counsel, to the quality of mental health care services. Launard says the findings her office makes in each case will get released to the public when the office files its annual report, as mandated. The office has been the center of a lot of political bickering since before it opened. The governor created the office by executive order after lawmakers failed to pass legislation to create it. Now, some lawmakers fear not enough Kansans are reaching out to the office simply because they don't even know it exists yet. Others say they don't believe the office is closing cases fast enough. Joining us this week to discuss this and more, we have John Wright with KQAM News, Dr. Russell Arbin Fox, political analyst from Friends University, and Diane Leffler, the opinion editor at the Wichita Eagle. Thank you, gentlemen, all for joining me this week. And Diane, I'm going to start with you. You and I have covered the issues with DCF, SRS before that for seems like forever. Is there any surprise that even this new oversight office seems to be plagued with controversy?
Well, I mean, I'm really surprised that 5 people have not solved the problems of foster children in Kansas. This has been going on literally ever since I got here. I've been here for 25 years, and I was writing about shortfalls, shortages, everything going wrong in this system back when it was called SRS. And it seems to me that this might be an indicator that we need to do something differently. I think that the situation, everything is privatized. It's this huge Byzantine maze of somewhat interconnected agencies, and it's all over the place. There's no way 5 people could have oversight of this. There's no way. 100 people couldn't have oversight of this. It's just messed up.
You talk about doing things different. That was the promise that Governor Brownback made when he made the initial push for decentralization and privatization. There'd been a little bit before that, but the idea was this was going to rejuvenate it, and it was going to create greater systems of oversight because there'd be private incentive. And of course, what we're seeing is that these agencies are being hit by the same staffing struggles that businesses all across the country are being hit with. And unfortunately, we're talking about children's lives here. This is something that maybe we ought to be a little bit more serious about than whether or not Starbucks is able to find employees to serve us coffee.
And of course, then there's the reputation that DCF has of being, punitive if somebody makes complaints. And maybe that might be part of why they haven't seen as many complaints come in as they were expecting.
It just comes down to, for me, always the bottom line. How much are you going to pay someone to run that department effectively, to hire people who could run it effectively and do these investigations in a timely manner? We have children who are trying to get an education. Some children are just trying to survive. But with these backlogs, 69 cases, and you have 5 workers to do it. So who is running the office? Which one of the 5? Can they shoot a memo to someone in the legislature or to the governor's office, say, hey, we're swamped down here, we need some more help, or reorganize the entire department, or, as Don mentioned, privatize it and send it out, and then follow it up that way? Because obviously, if you can't even get voter registration, if you can't get the software to work in one of the most important pieces of government, how are you going to solve DCF's problems? I don't get it.
Very in-depth and convoluted, just kind of like the program itself. And we've talked about it many times. We'll probably talk about it again. So let's tackle something else. It's a little closer to home for many Kansans: marijuana and fentanyl. The city of Wichita is now halfway to ending police arrests for possession of marijuana or fentanyl test strips. It's a topic that's still being argued even after this first round vote, as Cake's Jackson Overstreet shows us.
Having received 5 yes votes to 2 no votes, the motion has passed.
With that vote, the Wichita City Council made 2 changes to its drug ordinances. One is removing fentanyl test strips from being listed as drug paraphernalia.
It's about personal responsibility, so allowing folks to have access to this tool to test it to see if it is actually something that's going to kill them.
The other eliminates fines and penalties for small-time marijuana possession.
I'm a man of the people. My district voted overwhelmingly in the vote to decriminalize marijuana a few years ago, and I thought this was an appropriate continuation.
The changes do not legalize either marijuana or test strips in the city of Wichita, but takes the city's municipal court out of the picture if someone is charged with possession.
Our job is to utilize our resources to make our community safer, and I rather these resources be used to fight human trafficking, to fight opioids, fentanyl coming into our city, and to help people.
The change to marijuana laws was not universally supported on Tuesday. The city says it averages 750 to 850 minor charges a year. Now those would be prosecuted through the district court system under the new ordinance, adding extra pressure to a system already dealing with a backlog in cases.
I'll just tell you, I have no ability to just simply absorb that many cases.
Councilman Brian Fry says on top of those concerns, he felt like the policy was rushed.
Just the fact that we're debating policy that the public didn't see until this morning is completely untransparent in my mind.
That was the first round vote. There will be a second round vote in this coming week on that. And almost the next day, we had the county commission threatening to charge the city for those additional cases that the district courts might have to take up, perhaps putting some pressure on the city to change its vote.
But I really liked the mayor's response to that statement from the county, which is basically, before you do a legal analysis of the obligations that you would be taking on, how about you do a financial analysis of how much money the county is already committing to prosecuting people who are being charged with really low-level marijuana possessions. I mean, this is a strange... It's a very strange subject given our federal system, because you have the national government, which has listed marijuana, both medicinal and recreational, as a felony crime, the possession of it. And then you have states that have done a variety of different things, including Colorado right next door, legalizing both medical and recreational marijuana. Here in the city of Wichita, you have had multiple attempts to at least get the city council to instruct the police department and the local court system to not bother with these kinds of high-level prosecutions. I mean, treat it like an infraction, treat it like a parking ticket or something like that. The county reasonably feels itself caught in between the state and the national government and the city, but there's no reason why the county couldn't make its own assessment and say, you want to know what? We agree with the city. Considering our resources, this is not actually a good thing for us to be spending law enforcement and court dollars on, when there's larger problems out there than somebody who is caught in possession of a really small amount of marijuana.
And this isn't the first time that the city's tried this.
No, it's not the first time. And going back to that piece, anything you can do to prevent one death in that area is the right thing to do. And too many times things go left or go right politically, and then the right thing never gets done. at the bottom line of it, there's a lot of people out there that have suffered and are grieving over lost loved ones due to the fact that whatever the case that got them in that situation, they were not able to test whatever they were involved with. And then the other thing for me is, when did all this become an issue? I'd like to see a racial breakdown of all of this to find out, well, are we having too many Caucasians? And oh, it's a problem. But in the black and brown community, it's been a problem since the 80s when crack and all that came in. And then legislation, as Dr. Fox was mentioning, heavy sentences for lighter amounts of cocaine or marijuana. And so now, what is the issue here? Why the sudden alarm? This is a problem that should have been dealt with years ago and could have prevented a lot of heartache and heartbreak.
And perhaps, Dion, some of that change, the change in the makeup of the Wichita City Council, this last election, we saw that council swing to the left a little bit. And while this was a bipartisan vote, it never would have happened without that change.
Oh, no, I don't think it would have been touched at all. The excuse me, the penalties and the enforcement are very disproportionate. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it does fall disproportionately on African Americans. It falls disproportionately on Hispanic Americans, who are counted in the white category. So it is a problem.
And that disproportionality has reverberating effects all the way up through the institution. So, you got a police force that, they know where they can get the numbers. And so maybe they're going to focus on certain neighborhoods more than other neighborhoods.
Oh, wait a minute. You're talking about racial profiling?
Oh, no, of course not.
Let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, if we're not going to talk about that, what about the impact on families and kids when they have family members, fathers, uncles, brothers that are put away in jail because it is disproportionately men, and they're raised without those positive male role models in their lives?
Well, we're seeing that right now in all school districts, including here in Wichita, with a lot of guns coming to school, drugs coming to school, fights, other things that are happening. And this is where the missing parent is in jail, whether it's the mother or father, and the child's being raised by a grandmother, and you don't have that male figure. I'm going to get myself in trouble here. Single moms are doing a great job. I'm not going to say moms can't step in that role, because the ones that do are just fighting an uphill battle, and they're doing anything possible to move that youngster along. But if you have a majority of men incarcerated, there is no way in the world that child or family is not going to be impacted. Worse, if they overdose and that person is not around to help raise that family. That's the key that must be dealt with and not swept under the rug or put in a situation where we're going to enforce this neighborhood, we're going to go over here and do something with this community versus that community. It all has to be somehow centralized where all the community can benefit with whatever plan they come up with. And show me another plan. County, show me another plan. The city's offering a plan, and from what I read this morning, the county has not reached back to the mayor regarding their questions. So how about a novel idea? Sit down and talk about it. Yeah. They raise other task force for less. Where's this task force to dive into this?
Well, talking about the county, this is not the only issue raising a ruckus over there. The things were not quiet at the Sedgwick County Commission either this week. First, Commissioner Lacey Cruz took to social media accusing fellow commissioners of backroom deals and corruption. They struck back at this last week's meeting. The Wichita Eagle reports in her first public statement about these Facebook posts, Cruz doubled down on her accusations of the appearance of impropriety, saying she would stick by those words. In her post, Cruz says when County Manager Tom Stoltz brought a deal to sell a parking lot to the county's on-call real estate agent, it raised red flags for her and looked like the beginnings of a backroom deal. Meanwhile, the Eagle reported Stoltz told it the county was working within its policies, and it looked to him like Cruz was the one trying to negotiate her own sweetheart deal with Old Town developer Dave Burke. Cruz fellow Democrat Sarah Lopez read a lengthy statement from the bench criticizing Cruz for attacking staff publicly and causing distrust in the community. Commissioner David Dennis said, "I wanted to clear the air on a number of items. There's been accusations of corruption, accusations that commissioners are having favorites out here and doing things for their friends. I wanted to make sure everyone knew that every accusation I saw on that post was inaccurate." And this seems to be more than just a political spat because it's crossing party lines here, Dion.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's really dysfunctional over there right now, and it's a mess. I mean, it affected what we were just talking about with the marijuana. This week's meeting, Lacey Cruz tried to make some points about opioids and the money that the county's getting from the opioid settlement, and David Dennis, the chairman, just shut her off. Said, that's not relevant. We're not going to talk about it. The only thing we're going to talk about is what I want to talk about. And but that was a short-lived victory, because then when they got to the next item, which was other, commissioners could talk about anything they want to. So Lacey talked about the opioids. So it's just, I mean, we've got commissioners sniping at each other. We've got commissioners lobbing shells across the street at City Hall. This whole thing is dysfunctional. They need to get it under control. They need to, as you said, either appoint a task force or just all sit down together and figure out what they're going to do.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I actually had Sarah Lopez come and speak to my American government class, and long before any of this stuff broke. I had scheduled it a while ago, and I tried to get her, just privately to comment on some of this stuff, and she's a smart operator. She wouldn't say anything. She just said, well, meetings are about twice as long now than they used to be because all of this stuff is going on.
And we're talking about in the age post-COVID meetings here.
Yes, exactly.
And the thing that struck me was Cruz lobbying at Lopez. So the gender's out the door.
Gender and party.
And she's calling Lopez part of the good old boys network. I'm going, oh my goodness, really? Is this where it's come to, where elected officials really can't get along in a county government? I mean, I don't think it's as bad as it used to be in the past, but it's certainly getting that way quickly. And especially if there's something that's out there, Cruz is on a mission. Why would she put this out? Somebody in that financial office, call for an audit. I mean, what's going on? Are there ethics violations being made here or being committed? Well, let's open the book. One of the commissioners addressed the ethics and wanted to put some teeth in. I think it was Commissioner Howell. And then after the meeting, at the agenda review meeting, one of Cruz's projects came back on the agenda, I believe. And she asked why, and Commissioner Dennis says, well, we were all going to be out of town, but now just once we can have the meeting about this topic. So there's some things that are just, if it's transparency, well, they do air this on over the air. So, and then the public's invited to go down and watch and listen what's going on. But it just seems like there's not full transparency. Can these agents act upon themselves to bring information back to the county, or it's the other way around? Wow. Cruz seems to think it should be the other way around. So let's find out if that's the case.
It is.
Well, maybe.
No. I really do think that. I mean, I like and respect, these people individually, but when they all get together, it's just. I wonder what kind of culture is developing there, and it's not new. I mean, you had Richard Ranzow, you had Michael O'Donnell. I mean, it's just. Wow, something happens on the county commission level.
And we're going to have to leave that discussion there because we've got another brouhaha to discuss. This one involving faculty and staff at Emporia State University who could soon be feeling the effects of a newly approved and highly controversial policy allowing major staffing cuts. KIC's Maeve Ashbrook spoke with students on campus in Emporia to get their reaction.
Just 1 month into her time on campus, Emporia State University freshman Hannah Kelly is questioning what's next.
It really isn't going to affect anything this year, but next year it's going to become a major concern.
This week, the Kansas Board of Regents approved ESU's new workforce management framework, which lets university leaders fire any employee, including tenured faculty. It's because of a drop in enrollment and financial stress from the pandemic.
I live streamed it, I watched it, and so I got to hear everything that they talked about.
In a campus-wide email, University President Ken Hush said faculty and staff should know by Friday if they're part of the cuts, and the new policy is definitely getting students talking.
I understand why they're doing it, but I also look at it as like ethically and morally, like it can be wrong, especially for like professors who've been here for a long time.
ESU estimates this will affect less than 2% of students, but Kelly's worried that might include her. She's a political science major. There are only a few professors in her department.
Who else here is qualified to teach my classes? And if nobody here is, are they going to bring somebody in? And like I said, what's the quality of the content going to be? Like, how is it going to change from what I'm currently doing?
All current students will be able to finish their programs without having to transfer, according to that email from President Hush. In Emporia, Maeve Ashbrook, KQ News on your side.
And in a written statement, the university said, quote, out of deepest respect for our colleagues, we will not comment further at this time. According to that email from President Hush, most affected faculty will be able to stay until the end of this academic year. But this is a huge upset to the academic community, completely changing the way most universities work, Russell.
It's been the primary topic of conversation amongst colleagues of mine at Wichita State University, at KU. I mean, everybody is talking about this. And I mean, I'm an academic myself. I'm at a private institution, not a KBOR institution. We have different tenure rules. I am not tenured by choice, but I am a full professor. I've been there a long time. I intend to, stay there for the rest of my career. I can understand the immense stress that both faculty and students and the larger infrastructure that exists around the faculty and the students and the programs they teach must be experiencing at this time. Just a couple of really quick things. One, we've seen these kinds of devastating restructurings at other universities across the United States. This is the first time I'm aware of it happening at a state school in Kansas, and it's a really bad harbinger. Second thing, a lot of people have strong opinions on tenure. A lot of those opinions, I think, are not particularly well informed. The primary argument for tenure is just to be able to defend the distinct educational culture, the work that faculty over a period of years and decades are able to do for their students. Emporia State is not the same as Wichita State. It's not the same as KU. It's not the same as Friends University. Tenure rules are different. The things that those rules allow are different. Getting rid of them in some kind of bottom line reform, we got to clean out the institution and make it more streamlined in a business sense. That disregards the variety that a place like Emporia State can provide to a lot of students who need it.
Now, this elimination is my understanding only for one semester, Diane, but you and I both have heard from folks in the public who are concerned what this means for the future.
Well, I want to take it beyond academia a little bit here. What we're seeing is the influence on the university of Koch Industries. The company has showered millions on this university, and they expect to get something back for that, and this is what they are getting. If you look at what they're doing, it draws heavily from the philosophies of Charles Koch and his market-based management philosophy. And the president of the university is a former Koch executive with, as I understand it, a simple bachelor's degree rather than the advanced degree that university presidents usually have.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing here is this isn't a bug, this is a feature. And I think we're going to see it. I think we're going to see this domino effect throughout the university system. And this is just the first test.
All right, well, we'll have to watch and see. If it seems like life is getting more expensive, that's because it is. Inflation is not letting up, and one business expert tells Cake's Leon Purvis, expect things to get worse before they get better.
A lot of things I used to get for $2 are now $3.50, and in less than a year's time, that's bad.
Terry Hazen is reflecting on how much prices have gone up the past year, just on the simple grocery store items she's used to getting.
My bread's gone up almost $1 a loaf. I use a special bread.
But Terry is not the only one.
Meat's very expensive, and fruit.
So why are prices still high? When will they cool off?
I don't care what anybody says, we haven't really quite hit the reset button on this pandemic. So there are still some pressures that go with that from supply chains and all of the disruption that we had with that.
Dr. Larry Straub is a business professor at Newman University. He believes the demand for goods is high, but the supply is not.
We got pressures on prices just because there's too many dollars chasing too few goods, and that's just a kind of a dangerous cycle to be in right now.
Straub says the Federal Reserve raising the interest rate is supposed to cool off buying for prices to go down, but it's something that can't happen overnight.
And for those of us who are making a regular paycheck, it's hard enough, but then you have groups like retired people in Kansas who are on fixed incomes, and it's even worse.
It comes down to a choice: are my lights coming on, or am I going to have something in the refrigerator to eat? This is a real problem, and I don't know if you can legislate that from the top in Washington all the way through the legislature down to local city and county boards. This has got to be a community response, and we have many organizations, even grassroots organizations, trying to find ways to feed the homeless, trying to feed those in communities that are underserved, even with the food deserts in certain parts of town. And if they're on a fixed income, it's really difficult to manage life, especially if that's what you have coming in and there's more going out than it is coming in, and tough choices have to be made. And then you get down to, as the piece mentioned, too many surplus in dollars, not enough goods. We've seen baby formula shortages. We've seen other shortages that were blamed on supply chain. And when is a supply chain excuse going to stop? The war is going on in Ukraine with Russia, okay? There hasn't been a hurricane. Gas prices went up this week. So where is the problem with the supply chain? That is something the federal government can get a handle on over time. But for right now, it's going to be up to local organizations that deal with the communities that have and people that are affected by fixed incomes and those who are in underserved communities. You can go to not a full-blown grocery store, but just right in the corner, and a loaf of bread is gone when the delivery trucks come in on Wednesday. There's only 2 or 3 loaves, and I experienced that today, that you're able to get, because if you have to have special bread, it's out of there. It's gone.
And we are gone and out of time as well. So thank you so much, John Russell Dion, for joining us this week. I hope you've enjoyed our discussion. We'd also like to thank our news partners at KSN News, the Wichita Eagle, and Cake News for sharing their materials with us. We'd love to continue the conversation with you on social media. Just look for Pilar Pedraza TV or PBS Kansas on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. For now, stay safe and have a great week.